Some shows talk about one team. Other shows barely talk sports. This show will talk Packers, Brewers, and Bucks. Every day. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily with Steve Sparky Pfeiffer on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
It is that time again. Happy Thursday. Hope you are well. Brewers up 6-1. Bottom of 4. Brandon Woodruff leaving the game earlier in the second inning. Velocity just down like 84 miles an hour. And that obviously was concerning to Murphy and others. Pat Murphy talked then later in the game. Sophia Minter interviewed him. And he pretty much just said, there's no pain. He's got no pain whatsoever. Just for whatever reason, just can't get it to uncork. And the problem with all of this, I think, is the fact that he really hasn't been able to get it to uncork now for a bit. And coming off of that surgery that he had, where they didn't really know, the process as far as how long it was going to take him to get back. It took almost 2 years to get back. So this kind of is a feeling out process here of, how this is going to work, getting him back up to full speed again. Now, if he isn't hurt, like it sounds like he's potentially isn't, I think I figure out something. I figure out back spasms, figure out something tomorrow morning. And I rest him. I put him on the IL and I just let him rest one time through 10 days or whatever it is. I'd let him rest, miss 2 starts, just chill out, relax, and then try and bring him back out and see if he's any better. But if you go on the 10-day IL and you're not really throwing all that much and you come back and it's the same, well, now there's even a larger conversation of, is that all he's going to be able to get here? Like, is he going to be able to eventually come back? Because if there's no pain and there's nothing physically wrong with him, and that's just where it is right now and how it's going to be going forward, that's a career thing. Then this
right.
isn't he's going to have surgery and be done. This is his career over type deal. That's why for me, even if he's not hurt, I'd put him on the IL, give him full rest for 2 times through rotation, bring him back out, let him see what he has, and if it's no different, I don't know, might be it.
Yeah, that would be really scary. I don't know. I think the way
sad because he's busted his tail end to get back,
and he started so well too. And he wasn't even pitching bad today. It was just not up to the velocity that he's usually at. And I think that that can be so frustrating, considering that he's got his location down, considering that he's kind of changed his pitches a little bit since being hurt for so long and being able to adjust to his new kind of body, I guess to say. And to have this happen this early in the season, that's going to be on his mind no matter if he goes on the IL or not. I think that's going to be the problem. And you have to find a way to kind of, like you said, give him that rest, but also get his mentality probably in a better place at this point so that you can motivate him if he wants to keep playing.
I don't think there's any chance that you're going to have to try and motivate him. I don't think he's thinking retirement or wanting to not play anymore, whatever else. I will say this. I'm sure there will be Brewer fans of, dude, you're paying this dude how much money? And you knew damn right well that this could potentially be a possibility here where he may not get back to where he was and you still paid him. But if we're being, honest about this, doesn't it make the organization actually look relatively good around the rest of Major League Baseball from doing the right thing, standing behind their player? Does it exude class by the Brewers, paying that guy that much money, even though there was potentially questions of how much better he would be coming off of this or how good he would be coming off of this?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe from fan bases potentially, but I think from a player's standpoint, from the league standpoint, it's still all so monetarily driven. And I think that's what matters more is if you can still pay them more money, they don't really care if you're a nice place for a player to be and that they'll always treat you right. Doesn't matter if the paycheck isn't big enough.
You're right. It all comes down to the paycheck at the end of the day. So we'll just monitor this, see what happens. Bryce Terang just had an RBI base hit to right field. So now it's 7-1 Brewers, runners on the corners with Mitchell on third base now. Still nobody out in this inning. And again, after the last pitch, you make the switch. right here to the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network for the Potawatomi Sportsbook postgame show with our guys, Tim Allen and Tommy Wirtz. Looking forward to hearing those guys coming up. I'm sure Tim Allen will have plenty of thoughts on what is going on here with Brandon Woodruff. The other part of this that I am concerned about, not greatly concerned, but playing the worst case scenario type deal. If, let's say, he comes back, it is no better, and you're not seeing what you want to see out of him, and end up having to put him on the shelf or whatever you do, man, you have no veteran presence in this rotation at that point. You have nobody. So Vinny Rattino was speculating on the broadcast that Shane Drone might be the guy that ends up in the rotation spot for Brandon Woodruff if he were to have to go do an IL stint at some point, which makes sense. He threw 70-some pitches last Friday night if they decide to go that way with Shane Drone. But then you have, Gasser, you have Logan Henderson as possibilities. When Priester comes back, I would assume Sproat is out of the rotation. So you could keep Sproat in the rotation when Priester comes back if you wanted to go that way. So they have arms. The problem is you don't have a veteran arm that's kind of been through the battles and so forth in the dog days of, June and July. And then in that pennant stretch run when you're trying to win this division come September, or in game 1 of a playoff series or game 2 of a playoff series. I mean, all of a sudden you're looking at Priester, Mizorowski, and Patrick or Henderson potentially in a playoff series as your starting pitchers. And again, if we're just talking about getting outs and doing your thing, I'm feel fine with Mizorowski in a playoff game. I'm good with that. I think I feel fine with Priester if he looks like he did last year again this year. I feel okay with Priester in that situation. And I think of what's left of Patrick, Henderson, Sproat, Harrison, you have to make the determination then of who then. If a lefty is that important type deal, or what you want to do moving forward, could be Harrison if he pitches well. I think Logan Henderson is the best of all of them. Could be Logan Henderson. That's something they'll have to debate too. And again, this is worst case scenario, but none of those are vets. We've been sitting here talking for the whole beginning part of the season of they're going to have to trade for a third baseman at the deadline. They're going to have to trade for a third baseman at the deadline. Well, if he's not there and he's not available, and you have a legitimate frontline pitcher that's available at the deadline, potentially on the last year of his contract or a year and a half left on his contract, I have no names for you. But if that player exists, is that the player they go for instead? So Mizorowski can be the 2 in that scenario, and Priester then can be the 3 in that scenario, and you make a run at that, legitimate starting pitcher.
I don't know. I think with the guys, the way they're playing right now so far to start the season, you got to start just giving them these opportunities. I know we keep wanting this veteran presence in that group to be there and keep
for the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, but also at the same time, trust them. Jacob Mizorowski's been the one this season, and he started off the season pretty damn well. And I think that Kyle Harrison has started off the season pretty damn well. And Quinn Priester last season pitched the entire season pretty damn well. Give these guys the opportunity to be those stars. And I guess they don't trust them to be the leaders themselves. Trust them to go out there and be grown men when it comes to the playoffs and give it their best shot and try to motivate themselves. I think they can do it. And I think they're starting off the season showing that. I think last season, the playoffs, you saw that in Jacob Mizorowski. Yes, he had veteran presence around him, but that was him on the mound. That who was performing like that and with that type of energy. I think these guys got it.
Yeah, and again, you very well may be right, and they may have it, and they may step up, when the bell is rang and do their thing, and we don't have to worry about those veteran type guys one way or the other. I don't worry about Mizorowski. He showed last year in the postseason when the lights are the brightest. That's normally when he's his best. It's during the regular season when all the focus isn't on him is where he tended to get himself in a little bit more trouble and losing focus a little bit more. Now, if we get to the playoffs and he pitches like he did last year, we're good. Priester, I don't know. If we talk about Henderson or Patrick or Harrison, I don't know. I don't know what to expect in the playoffs, right? But if it's a legitimate stud at the front, like they got Sabathia, legitimate one, everybody fall behind. They got Greinke, legitimate one, everybody fall behind. That's what I'm saying. If it's not Woodruff, and you need to go get that other guy from Mizorowski to be the 2, and now you have a dangerous 1-2 punch. You got something. Nikolai Lautaka text line from 414 said they had a veteran in Freddie Peralta. They did. Not going so well for him currently with the New York Mets, but yes, they definitely did have one. Ted in Portland here, Sparky. The Brewers' season of injury misery marches on. I think we're crazy if we think Woodruff is going to be just fine. I believe the Brewers' future is very bright, but between the pop gun lineup and the injury curse, this year is already feeling like a lost transition year before all the young guns arrive. Yeah, it could very well be a gap year until the young guys get here. But remember. They're winning 8-1 here. I don't want to jinx them, but there's a good chance that they win 2 out of 3 in this series if they win this game, right? And they're going to be over, unless they get swept in this next series, they're going to be over. It's the Nationals, so I would assume not.
Well,
but if they get, provided they don't get swept against the Nationals, they're going to be over 500 when you presumably are going to get back Churio and Vaughn back in this lineup on Monday, right? Monday, Tuesday, whatever it may be. You survive the first month of the season without, your 3 big boppers in Vaughn, Yelich, and Churio for good portions of it, and essentially would have been your number 2 or 3 pitcher in Priester as well, and you're still over 500 even after all of that. And now as you add them back in, then it's, as you would say, now we go, because now we got our guys, and now we're going to score some runs. They got 8 runs up right now. Rengifo's got a big hit in this game. Hamilton's out there playing.
Contreras has 3 RBIs.
Hamilton's getting
like
better. Yeah, but Contreras is a stud.
Yeah, but sometimes people forget about him, and they keep talking about this lineup like he's not a part of it.
I'll tell you something else. I that 9 to noon show, I just cannot get enough of Brandon Snide, because I just don't agree with anything he says. and I was listening to Brandon Snide today, and he was on there again, chastising the Brewers for Tyler Black not playing last night. I don't understand how Tyler Black's not playing. And I'm like, well, it's not that hard. Here, I'll help you. Do you want Tyler Black to play or Gary Sanchez? That's your option. Because neither one of them, well, that's not true. Tyler Black can only be a designated hitter. Sanchez at least can catch. So if you want Contreras to catch, then the DH options currently are Sanchez and Tyler Black. They're not starting him anywhere in the field because of his lack of defense. He has struggled to have a defensive position this entire time, and it has not changed. So from that perspective, that's why. And yes, the other part of it was lefty. I get all that. But again, if he had a position defensively, it would be easier to justify putting him out there. But when all you have is designated hitter to put him at, because you don't trust him anywhere, and Sanchez has the thump and Black doesn't, then yeah. And he's right-handed. Yeah, Gary Sanchez is the play. That was the only option. Sanchez or Black. Who are we playing today, Pat? Mr. Murphy? And yeah, we're going to go with the right-hander with a thumb. Makes sense to me.
And I think, again, we talk about Tyler Black sometimes. I feel like he's a lot better than he is. And I like giving him opportunities, but to your point, if he's not going to be able to be out in the field like some of these other players can be, you have to start giving other guys opportunities. So this is his last option. Once he gets sent down, they kind of have to make a decision then. And once that happens, I think there's going to be other guys that will get chosen over him when the time comes where he may need to be moved up to the MLB level for the final time.
I think Tyler Black's going to trade somewhere. I don't know if it'll be this year, the offseason.
Feels like a Seattle guy for some reason.
I don't know. But he's going to end up getting moved somewhere at some point because he just doesn't fit in, I don't think, necessarily long-term to what this team is trying to accomplish. Coming up next, John Steppe, a Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel Badgers beat writer. Nolan Winter had an idea that I guess I'm just not down with and don't agree with. So we'll get John Steppe's thoughts on that. We'll talk some more about the Badgers spring practices wrapping up as well in football. And don't forget, Wendy's new cookie dough frosty fusion is the ultimate feel-good snack. Everything from the cookie dough to the brownie batter sauce was made for max happiness. Go grab a new cookie dough frosty fusion today and get that how do you say that? Dopamine.
Yeah, I think you got it.
Dopamine.
I don't have the read right in front of me.
Tricked up on that. I didn't see that one coming. Here, let's try this again. Go grab a new cookie dough frosty fusion today and get that dopamine flowing. Get it? Dopamine.
No, Sparky.
Like cookie dough. No. I'm sure it's funny to a lot of other people, though. That's all that matters. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Sparky here. All right, welcome in, Steve Sparky Pfeiffer. Over there is Charlie Usen. How are you doing today, Charlie?
I'm doing pretty good.
How is life?
Life's going all right. I saw my grandma today, as I do every Thursday.
Did you tell her what we talked about yesterday?
I didn't. I forgot about it. Sparky, my short-term memory is not good sometimes.
Come on,
She got me a sub, so then I was focused on the sub, and then that was more important. So, yeah, next time I'll bring it up with her. Don't worry.
Yeah, you definitely are going to have to do that. I do have good news. All of our new bumper music is in and ready to roll for tomorrow.
Ooh.
We are locked and loaded and ready to go. I am excited to hear all the different types of music that we're going to play. I added a couple on at the end last night.
I did too. I put 3 of my own.
You did on as well, yes. I put 3 of mine on too. And we had, about 20 other ones. So a lot of different options to pick from for the bumper music that'll start again May 1st tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Joining us now on the guest hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. He is John Steppe, Badgers beat writer for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Mr. Steppe, people can follow you on X at jsteppe1. How are we doing today, my friend?
I am great. We got through basketball portal, got through football spring practices, so got through a busy spring here in Madison.
I'd like to, before we jump into football, and by all means, we should hop into football because spring practice is done and everything is good to go. I want to talk about Nolan Winter. Now, Nolan Winter decided that he was going to come back and play for the Badgers. And I'm not going to say that it was all that surprising because it probably wasn't all that surprising at the end of the day. I thought we had the audio clip. I guess I don't have the audio clip. Nolan Winter made a comment the other day to Jesse Temple, who does a great job covering the Badgers, about how coming back, he wants to shoot the ball more and take more shots inside of this Badgers offense coming back. I'm not going to tell you that I'm an expert on everybody they picked up in the portal. It appears they replenished and reloaded that backcourt again with some good basketball players. I've watched Nolan Winter's entire career at Wisconsin. When he said it, I shook my head and said, oh, no. We don't need you taking more shots than you're already taking. Like, if you're going to tell me that he's going to take 15 shots a game, I don't like the Badgers' chances. Like, play with inside the offense, let the backcourt do what they do, and play like that. And I don't know if that was part of the negotiation to get him to stay or not. That, okay, we're going to have him more involved in the offense. Your thoughts on that Badgers offense with Greg Gard and how you would use Mr. Winter?
Yeah, there are a lot of new pieces, so certainly a lot of uncertainty when we're talking about, they have 6 returning players and 8 newcomers, 1 open roster spot still.
Welcome to college sports, John. Welcome to college sports.
Yes, where you're returning basically 30% of your roster, when by the time they add their 15th guy, it'll be 30% that they're returning. But, I think you can probably have a little bit more of a role for Nolan Winter when you just think about, John Blackwell took up a high volume of opportunities. Nick Boyd took up a high volume of opportunities. And obviously, those are 2 tremendous players that you want to have the ball in their hands. But you also look at it and, sometimes I think what Nolan Winter did maybe went a little bit unnoticed or maybe less noticed just because they had so much other talent on the court. And maybe it is possible that, you find a way to efficiently get, Nolan Winter more touches. He's in pretty unique company in terms of having 12 double-doubles. That puts you in Ethan Happ, Frank Kaminsky territory. Those are 2 pretty good names to be with. So you look at it, and I think, having Nolan Winter is obviously a fantastic retention. You could make an argument that maybe that's the most important retention that they could have had, just because you'll also look at how much you probably would have had to pay John Blackwell. Retaining Austin Rapp, something that, did not really ever seem to be a doubt. Rapp said to me, in that locker room after the High Point loss, that he's 100% planning on coming back. So not one that we were surprised by, but, to get him back with the scoring punch that he brought off the bench is big, and really his improved defense and a lot of the other improvements kind of throughout kind of other facets of the game where, earlier in the season with Rapp, it kind of felt like his defense and some of the other things were a vulnerability or liability, I'd even say. But he certainly got a lot better at that. And then, these, backcourt additions, I think all add, some excitement in terms of what this team could be. Ian Elmer obviously has shot the 3-point shot at an incredible rate. Obviously, Trey Autry's production at George Washington was excellent. You think about a guy like Owen Foxwell, who comes in with a lot of international experience. That adds another kind of key element here. So I think there's certainly a lot of guys that could be, big factors. And, how exactly this, shakes out is going to be really interesting to watch in the summer and then going into October, preseason practices and even in those first couple of non-conference tests. This will be a really interesting group to see just offensively how they gel together, but also defensively, can they come together a little more quickly? You think about last year, it took a while for that defense to gel, and having, Victor Yanuetu, the Hofstra forward, I think certainly helps with that. He knows why he's here in why he will be here in Madison, and that's rim protection. So I'm certainly intrigued by what this team can be, and it'll be interesting to see kind of just how all these pieces come together.
I think when you said Ethan Happ and Frank Kaminsky, I said, right, not special. So good college players, but probably not a lot more. I mean, Kaminsky's played in the NBA for a minute now, right? So he's had a nice longer career, but he really hasn't been that starter that you go to and you feed the ball to and Frank goes to work like it was at Wisconsin. That's not necessarily it. He's been a nice role player for them for certain around the league when he's had his time to be the 8th guy or the 9th guy or whatever the case may be. Hap really even have that even in the NBA. How good is Winter? Is he better than Kaminsky? Is he better than Hap? Like how would you summarize and scout out Mr. Winter?
Yeah, when you just look at what they've done at the college level, that's a pretty high bar. And they played on different teams, different styles of play.
Sure.
So it's hard to make an apples to apples comparison there. But I think the ceiling is really high. When you think about, how much better Nolan got, even just physically, from sophomore to junior year, and you have the what if of, okay, he has another year, to get better. He strongly feels that Wisconsin is the best place. He looks at the NBA as his goal. And I think that is a very feasible goal for him. And, with one more year of development, you're already talking about some pretty special production. And, I think that could very much continue.
He is John Steppe, a Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel Badgers beat writer. Follow him on X at jsteppe1. Let's transition over to football. Spring practice officially all done now. Last time you and I talked, you had some concerns maybe of what that Badgers offensive line was looking like at that point. It seems, not that I was there, but it seems from everything I've read that they finally started to turn a corner there.
Yeah, I felt overall the offense got better. When you look at where they were, maybe practice 3 compared to practice 15, I do think the offense, is starting to figure things out. And, all of this is relative. Okay, was that a good offensive play or a bad defensive play? Okay, was that a bad offensive play or a good defensive play? We're seeing the same guys go up against the same guys, for 15 times in the spring. But, I think back to Saturday, so that would have been practice number 13. That felt like the best offensive. The offense really clicked, and you kind of saw what they could be. I thought the offensive line, not necessarily perfect. There were still plays that would have been sacks, if they were allowed to hit quarterback. But, I thought they took some strides. I think they gave the quarterbacks, a chance a lot more, and I think that made a big difference. There were still plays maybe as a week before that where there's like a false start, what would have been a sack and an interception. And, to have that 3-1, was not a, banner showing there. But, I do think there was some growth there. And, the question is, okay, when you're going into Lambeau week 1 against Notre Dame, that's really going to be the test of, okay, how much is this growth, and against, some pretty formidable competition right off the bat. But yeah, I think the offensive line showed some improvement. Some of the wide receivers, I think, showed some improvement. So yeah, I do think there was, some overall offensive improvement, as hard as it is to make, massive conclusions. This is not me declaring, okay, the offense is good enough to win 10 games all of a sudden. And it's certainly not me ruling out anything either. But, just from what we've seen at this point in the year, yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest area of improvement that stood out to me.
Colton Joseph is the transfer they got in. He's going to be your starting quarterback. They pretty much anointed him that as soon as they got him, which I understand. Is there a clear gap between him and everybody else? And then who is that second guy behind him, and how big of a gap is there?
Yeah, I think, as you said, Colton Joseph is QB1. Not just because he wears number 1. Fitting choice of number there. He is clearly the guy at quarterback. He came in to be the guy. And I don't think anything in the spring really changed that. It is really interesting behind him because, if you would have asked me, without seeing any spring practices, so if you would have asked me instead of on April 30th on, March 10th or something like that, I would have said, okay, I think you're probably looking at, Joseph, then Deuce Adams, then Carter Smith, then Ryan Hopkins. And
yeah, it didn't happen that way.
No. Ryan Hopkins had an outstanding spring. And I think there's a case for him to potentially, I think he showed that he's in a better spot right now than Carter Smith. I don't think there's really any doubt about that. And I think he has maybe the potential to compete with Deuce Adams for that number 2 spot, which, is saying a lot for a freshman. So, probably one of the best compliments I can give him for this spring was he didn't look like a freshman quarterback. I liked his poise. I liked his mobility. I liked how he threw the ball. Those are 3 key things there. And I think he checked all 3 of those boxes. And that certainly will be a key thing to watch in fall camp in terms of, his continued trajectory, and certainly an upward trajectory when you're looking at, what he's done already when, last semester he was just a high school student. And now, he's looking like potentially the second best quarterback in this room.
The other part about this is I found interesting from Fickle of, okay, now we're going to go back and figure out what the offense is going to be. Now that we know the strengths and weaknesses of a bunch of guys that we haven't seen before, now we're going to kind of go back and kind of put this together. You're there, you're watching it. Is it a more talented group than what they had last year on offense? Is it the same? Is it less talent? What would you say on that?
I like the talent at a lot of positions. I think a lot of it is going to go down to how this offensive line shows up. If this offensive line can click, I see a lot of talent that can shine. But if this offensive line isn't really, gelling against outside competition, I think maybe you lose. You think about how much talent was in that running back room last year. They just didn't really have all that much space to run. So I think there's definitely some talent that, there's enough talent that if the offensive line does its part, you could see a significant increase in wins, I would say. But, it's so much of this is going to go down to, okay, does the offensive line give Colton Joseph enough time? Does, this offensive line give this kind of whole litany of running backs, who all have playmaking ability? Can they give them space to run? And, if so, I certainly like the talent that they have there. And I would say, yeah, overall offensively, I feel like there's more talent. And I'd say probably also some more talent in the secondary too on the defensive side.
I want to get your thoughts on the secondary. I feel like the front 7, I feel like they're fine there. Obviously, linebackers are good. These new defensive linemen they've brought in, I feel like there's good stuff being talked about there. I don't feel like there's a lot of confidence necessarily in what that secondary is going to look like this year. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I like the way that they, I like the physicality that they played with. I think of a guy, not necessarily a first teamer in a lot of these practices, but, somebody like Carson Van Dinter, the Iowa State transfer, he's somebody that stood out. In terms of somebody that could compete for, those 1 reps, Fletcher at cornerback, I liked what he did. So, I would say there were some practices where I was like, okay, this secondary really has it. And then there were some others where, okay, they, blew a couple plays. And, if you do that in a game, that could be costly. So I think you have the potential there to see an improvement. You look at it and, that's probably one of the more glaring areas defensively. Obviously, they did pretty well against the run, relatively speaking. If you were to pick one positive-ish from last year, it would be that run defense. I think it's probably not as much of a discrepancy this year, potentially, between that and pass defense. But, I haven't necessarily seen enough to say, okay, buy your season tickets now. This is going to be a lockdown secondary. No, that would be premature for sure. But no, I think there are definitely some positives there. Bates, Burks, you can kind of go down the list of guys that I think have a lot of potential here.
He is John Steppe, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Badgers beat writer. Follow him on X at JSteppe1. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
You betcha. Take care. There he is, John Steppe, joining us on the Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call. That is all. And let me tell you about my friends over there at Potawatomi. Step up to the plate. Take a shot at winning major prizes in the $300,000 Big League Series at Potawatomi Casino Hotel, Milwaukee. April through June, you can win a share of $300,000 in prizes. All monthly promo entries count towards the grand finale drawings on June 26th. Get triple the entries during Brewers home games and score one of 3 all-new Toyota vehicles. More info online. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play. Only at Potawatomi. Coming up next, Charlie's Sounds of the Day. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Sparky with you. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily. See Sparky Fiver, Charlie Usen producing. Habish, and Rotier, baby. That is where you have to go if you are injured in a car accident and are trying to figure out what to do next. As I've talked about before, I've went through my own scary proposition where I was sideswiped by a flatbed truck, spun around on the interstate on I-94, and then hit by a semi. I literally was attached to the semi in the fast lane going 75, 80, however fast the semi was going, for I don't know how many feet I was on top, attached to that semi. But it can be very, very scary. And then you've got to figure out what to do next. And you got to be able to, find that one person that you can trust that's going to do the best they can for you to get you what you deserved at the end of the day. Hospital bills and what are you going to do for a vehicle and all this other stuff that comes into play. Habish and Rotier, national reputation, hometown service. National reputation for the wins, hometown service for all the happy clients that they've served over the years. They've been doing this since 1930, 13 different locations around the state of Wisconsin. They're going to work for you and do the best they can for you. And they're going to treat you like you're a family member, a friend, somebody that they want to go to work and work hard for versus just a number, just another person coming in and out of a lawyer's office. That's something you obviously want to avoid at the end of the day. Check them out today. Habish and Rotier, Habish.com. Again, that's Habish.com. Normally we do this at 3:40, doing it earlier today because we will have the Potawatomi Sportsbook Baseball postgame show following us with Tim and Tommy. Once this Brewer game is over, they're up 8-1, bottom of 6 currently.
1, 2, 3. What sound clips will Chicago Charlie pick today for Sparky? Will Sparky become enraged? Will laughter ensue? It's time for Charlie's Sound of the Day. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
All right, here we are. Where are we going first, Charlie Usen?
All right, since we were just talking about the Badgers, let's stick with the Badgers. This is head football coach Luke Fickell discussing not having a Wisconsin player be drafted in the NFL draft for the first time since 1978.
Disappointing, but it's also a realization. And so it is what it is, but I think there is some realization that I want to make sure these guys in this program understand and know. It's not, hey, that's not right. It should have been this. It should know that. Okay, that's the realization of where we are, and that's not the expectation. That's not what we want. That's not what we desire to have. Well, then we need to change it. And so there's a lot of things that we got to do to make sure that that's not the case. But it's also an eye-opening realization to say, hey, this is where we are, and we got to change.
My thing on this is it they simply didn't have talented enough players that he put on those rosters? Or is it that they simply didn't coach those guys up? Or is it those guys simply weren't motivated to do everything they had to do to get to the level needed in order to get drafted? It's one or a combination of those three, Charlie.
Well, and I think it's a combination of those three. The fact that not only did they not have a player drafted, but frankly, there was really only one player in Vinny Anthony that was truly on anybody's board at all. Like, that's what's more frustrating, is that you only have one really draft eligible guy going out there that anybody wants. And the Badgers need to do better. I think what they've done in the transfer portal this year, what they've done in the recruiting world this year, it looks better. It looks like they're taking that step forward, and hopefully over the next 2-3 years, if Luke Fickell is still the head coach, that you see more guys at least putting their names into that pool.
I mean, you could literally pencil in linemen every year into the draft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they could pencil in a defensive
running
end
back,
or an outside
generally,
linebacker,
even if it's
running
not a star.
back every year. Even the quarterbacks ended up getting drafted, being backup quarterbacks in the league or competing for a backup quarterback position, and got absolutely none of that. Charlie, where are we going next?
Next up, we're going to hear from former Badger Joe Thomas, but he was discussing a time when he was with the Browns, and Peyton Manning rang him up to see if he would come to Denver.
I'm laying in bed with Andy. We're watching Sunday Night Football right before the trade deadline, and I look at my phone. I'm getting a phone call, and it's an unlisted number. I'm wondering, might as well. It's a commercial break. I'll take this one. Hey, hello. Hey, what's up, buddy? This is your drinking pal from the Pro Bowl. And I'm like, kind of sounds a lot like Peyton Manning. This is weird. And we used to drink a lot of Mai Tais when the Pro Bowl used to be in Hawaii, right? Yeah. Now it's in Orlando. I don't know what they drink now, maybe water. But and so he's like, hey, listen to this. Our GM, John Elway, he's been trying to trade for you. We lost Ryan Clady, who's our left tackle, but the Browns, they don't want to trade you, right? We offered a first round and a third round or something. And basically the only way it's going to get done is if you go in there and raise a stink and demand a trade. And I'm like, well, Mr. Manning, I love you. I love playing for you in the Pro Bowl, but like, I'm happy here. I'm not going to do that. That's just not who I am. I'm a loyal guy. Yeah. He's like, well, we're going to win a Super Bowl this year, which they did.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you think about it, all you have to do, he's like, go into your GM's office. He's like, pull your pants down when he's not there. Take a big dump right on his desk. You don't have to tell him anything. You don't have to demand a trade, but I guarantee they will trade you if you do that, and you'll be gone. And I say, well, that's a good joke, and I appreciate that. I might tell that story to somebody someday, but I don't think that's going to happen.
That's wild, right? I mean, it's a pretty funny story. Peyton Manning, who was in Indianapolis forever and was only really not in Indianapolis at that point and how he got to Denver because of the neck injury that he had. And the Colts decided to part ways because the year that he was out, they won one football game and got Andrew Luck in the draft and said, okay, we have our quarterback of the future. We're just going to let you go. And I also wonder if Irsay simply just didn't want it on his hands if something went wrong with Manning in a football game and that neck got hurt again or something went sideways. So they let him go. He ends up in Denver and was a complete shell of himself when they did win the Super Bowl that year. But again, I mean, I give him credit. Like, how many guys did Aaron Rodgers call to try to have them go throw a fit and demand a trade to Green Bay? How many guys did Brett Favre call to try and do the same thing? I would guess probably not many, if at all any. How many times do you think Giannis has done that? I would guess zero.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers might have done it since he's left the Packers. He's gotten Alan Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling jobs consistently. Yeah,
now, sure. But again, those guys were free agents, though. Mm-hmm. That wasn't calling up a guy that is a stalwart.
Saying, hey, demand a trade, basically.
Go in there, throw a fit, and demand a trade to Denver, and then you come here and we're going to go win a Super Bowl together. And then for Joe Thomas to say no, like, how many guys tell Peyton Manning no when he makes that call? How many say no?
I think that's a guy, at least when you say no, it's no hard feelings usually. There's some guys, if you say no to them, that's a affront to them.
Right. Yeah, they get offended. All right, well, third and final one.
And last up, we're going to head over to Run It Back, where former Spurs, kind of all-time great, they love him there, Bruce Bowen, was discussing the most underrated player that he's ever guarded in his career, and it's a former Buck.
Okay, I want to ask you this too, a two-parter here. I need to know the toughest player you ever had to guard. I can imagine we could probably guess one of those. And then I want to know the player that we wouldn't guess that you were that always just kind of gave you the most trouble.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this one. I'm going to go second first.
Okay.
And Michael Redd. Michael Redd is unorthodox.
Lefty.
But his release was behind his head. Mm-hmm. And that system they had in Milwaukee, it was a lot like what Sacramento did with the Princeton offense, but he had so many options as far as going off a screen, straight cut to the basket, back door. Those things gave me issues to the point where Manu and I were together last week, and he was like laughing at me like, hey, I know somebody who gave you problems. When Michael Redd was on the floor, Bruce, you were all over the place. And I'm like, only because he had 4 points when I came off the floor, but then Manu started guarding. Now he got 18. Yeah. Manu want to blame
He got him going.
No, that's a lie. He didn't get it. It was all me.
That's a really good story. I've never heard that story before. That's really, really good.
Well, and again, just a shout out to Michael Redd. We were talking about him last week, and it's sometimes easy to forget about Michael Redd just because he played in an era where the Bucks basketball wasn't the most fun to watch, but at the same time, a legend in Milwaukee.
Yeah, he doesn't like me either.
Does anybody like you, Sparky?
Well,
any former players that you interviewed when they were players?
I just got mad, and we were at a practice at the Cousins Center. I walked in with times in the game marked down. I said, hey, man, you're a leader on the team and everything else. Why don't you hustle back on defense? I always hustle back. I go, really? And I started reading the times when he was walking down the court in the game.
That's so
and then
petty.
He got mad at me and said what he said. And then I came back on the radio here in Milwaukee, played his response and said, who thinks Michael Redd hustles back on defense? Full fall lines. People losing their mind on Michael Redd. So, yeah, no.
You really have changed.
Yeah, I'm way softer now than I was, man. I promise you. I am not nearly as angry and mean-spirited as I used to be back then. Is that good or bad? I don't know. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily, live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Jonathan Lucroy exposes David Stearns.
Some shows talk about one team. Other shows barely talk sports. This show will talk Packers, Brewers, and Bucks. Every day. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily with Steve Sparky Pfeiffer on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
Live from the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Steve Sparky Pfeiffer, Charlie Usen over there. Sal Freelick just went yard at American Family Field. That is 12 runs on the board. And we were right, by the way, yesterday after they scored 13 2 days ago. We're like, I bet you they score 1 or 2 tonight. And that's exactly what happened. The D-backs bullpen came in and shut the Brewers offense down yesterday.
Well, but you come back today and you rebound a little bit. Yeah, they come in and shut them down, but with the way Brandon Woodruff comes out of this game at the beginning of it, you can see that potentially taking away some energy from the rest of this team, and it didn't. They just kept going right away, and often this is what you need to see. Again, yes, we were right that they were going to go back down to 2 runs, but then they come right back up. So it's kind of like, back-to-back games. Almost you just forget about last night. It's back-to-back games of having awesome offense, like we also said yesterday.
Well, see, and again, this offense cooking now 2 of the last 3 games, and they're about to have their offense completely changed again. Because once Vaughn and Cheerio come back, everything is going to change a little bit at that point. All right, so it is the top of the 3 o'clock hour, which means even though the Brewery game is going on, we still like to do the same thing each and every day.
It's time to talk about the Crew. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network.
Tim Allen, Tommy Wirtz will be here for the Potawatomi Sportsbook postgame show. After the last pitch, you always make the switch here to the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. Bottom of 7 right now in that one. Again, 12-1 Brewers over the Arizona Diamondbacks. So Jonathan Lucroy, former Brewers catcher, was on a podcast with 2 former Major League players, Kevin Pillar and Cody Allen. And the name of the podcast is To the Majors. Okay. Now, both of these guys are former players. Both of these guys could stand to take a broadcasting class of some sort, because for the first 5 to 6 minutes of this, I think Lucroy spoke like 3 times, got cut off after first 2 or 3 words every time. And really, Pillar was the biggest offender, if we're being honest. Cody Allen interjected a little bit, but Pillar was acting like everybody was tuning in to listen to him, which maybe they do. But
it's his show.
Oh, my goodness gracious. It was just a frustrating listen. Anyways, so they talk to Jonathan Lucroy, and they bring up the idea that he should have been teammates with Cody Allen in Cleveland back in 2016. But Lucroy is the one that vetoed the trade because Cleveland was on his no trade list and didn't go. And Lucroy was like, yeah, he'd probably boo me out of the stadium in Cleveland if I ever went back to Cleveland, right? Because I vetoed the trade to Cleveland. Well, I believe for the very first time, at least LaCroix thinks it's for the very first time, he tells the story of what really went down between him, David Stearns, and the Brewers that led up to the vetoing of this trade. It's the first time I've ever heard this. We'll play this and we'll pause and go through it together. Check this out.
So what happened is, and I haven't told this publicly, but I really don't care anymore, but I get middle of the season, I get yanked from a game. After the game, I get called in the office, and to the manager's office. It's me, Craig Counsell, David Stearns, Matt Arnold, Pat Murphy was in there, and David Stearns looks at me and he says, "Who? We just traded you to a World Series contending team." Now, they hadn't come to us. They hadn't told us anything. I was like, well, it's got to be the Dodgers or it's got to be the Rangers.
Now, before we get to this part, because I wasn't going to play the whole thing back, before this part, he mentions that he had an 8-team list on his no trade clause. And Cleveland was one of the 8 teams on there, right? That was one of the 8 teams where he decided he didn't want to go, whether it was they have a starting catcher already, and he's not going to be able to play there for, a full year and a half. Whether it's he just doesn't want to play in that city, whether it's he doesn't think they're good enough to potentially go to the playoffs, whatever the case may be, he had his reasoning, and Cleveland was one of them on the list. All right, with that being said, we move on.
Because there's only 2 teams I know that are playoff teams that are not on my no trade list.
And possibly need a catching.
Yeah, and possibly need a catching. I knew the Rangers did, and I knew that the Dodgers did. And so I asked him, I go, okay, who'd you trade me to? And this is what he said. I swear on everything. He told me, oh, we can't tell you that. And I was like, wait a second, you just traded me and you can't tell me who you traded me to? And he's like, yep. And I
So
said,
what were they hoping for in return? Like, okay, yeah, I agree. Like they needed you to say yes.
Well, let me get to that. So he said, well, there has been some medical stuff that hasn't cleared yet. I'm like, what medical stuff? I've never really been, I don't have any issue. Like, what medical stuff? I'm hitting 310 right now.
You're an all-star that year.
Freaking 15 tanks or whatever. 10, no, I think it was like 12. I don't know what it was. It was somewhere in there. And I'm like, what issue are we looking at here? He's like, well, we're just want to let you know. And I'm like, well, who'd you trade me to? He's like, I can't tell you that. And I was like, I told him, I said, I'm going to walk out of this room and I'm going to find out who it is in about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
Stop right there. First of all, I want to get Matt Arnold on to talk about this right here, on top of all the other Brewer stuff. But if I don't remember to bring this up, I'm putting on Charlie Usen to remind me when we book the interview, whenever that may be. Normally we get him once a year for the toy drive.
So I have to remember
for the toy drive, November. Hey, you have a better brain than me. So
I told you my short-term memory is not great.
Yeah. So I want to know, because there has to be a reason of why they couldn't tell him who he was being traded to. But my follow-up to that would be, whatever the reason is, why would you even tell him then? If you can't tell him where he's going, why would you even tell him? Why not just wait and then tell him once you can tell him where he's going? Because this is kind of a jerky move. I love David Stearns, but this is kind of a jerky move to be like, we're trading you. Okay, where am I packing my bags? Where am I going? Oh, well, I can't tell you. Then why are we having this conversation if we can't tell me? This is just very, very bizarre. And I want to ask Dillard about this when Dillard is on Monday too.
That'll be a little easier.
Really remember. Because I want to know if this is common in Major League Baseball. Like, is it common to bring a player in, tell him he's been traded, but then not be able to tell him who he's been traded to?
Well, and I don't think so, only because I feel like they did it that way due to him having the list of teams, and that one of the team that he was getting traded to was on that list. And I think,
but eventually he's going to find out and then have the chance to veto it.
But I guess to some degree, again, they're trying to and he gets into this. We'll hear it from him.
Yeah.
But just try to trap him into this somehow and kind of be guilt him almost into saying, fine, whatever. Yeah, just I'll do what you guys say, what you want me to do. I think legally they have to tell him that he's getting traded to one of these teams so that he can dispute it. But they probably don't have to tell him which team. They can just say, hey, you're getting traded to one of these teams. If he was getting traded to a team that wasn't on the list, no, they don't have to tell him. But because he has to get his opportunity to veto it, they have to say in some degree that he's getting traded to one of those teams.
Charlie, they got to tell him. He's got to know what city he's flying to. What are you going to tell him? Oh, okay. First of all,
you can tell him that again after the trade.
But this is how
this
works.
When he finds out.
But Charlie, this is how this works. You have to talk to this traveling secretary on the other team to arrange airfare and everything else. You have to call your family and be like, hey, I'm moving to Cleveland. I'll be back after the season, or wherever it is that he's getting traded. At some point, you got to tell him.
Yeah, but with the teams,
just let him find out on Twitter.
But with the teams that are on that list, they do have to tell him, because again, he gets veto rights.
They've got to tell him, regardless if there's a no trade clause or not a no trade clause.
But it doesn't matter if he finds out in the media that it's one of the teams that aren't on his list. It doesn't matter as much. This, legally, again, they have to tell him straight up that he's getting traded to one of these teams, because it can't go through until he says it goes through.
I'm telling you right now, you have to tell the player where they're going. And if you don't, I'm just not going to tell you. I'm not telling any of my players where I'm trading them to. We'll let them be surprised when the traveling secretary from the team they're going to calls them. We're not going to have that interaction. That is ridiculous.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that for this specific situation,
any situation, I don't care if he has a no trade list or not. You have to tell him.
No, they can tell him after they make the trade and the trade's complete with any of the other teams, and it wouldn't matter. Like this one, they have to tell him before the trade is complete because he has to be able to make his right to veto. But they don't have to tell him which team. They just have to tell him before the trade. Otherwise, they can make the trade, complete the trade, and tell him immediately afterwards. Like they can still do that. That's fine. I'm not saying they can't do that.
I don't know if anybody else is confused what he's saying, but I am very confused. So that's okay though, because I tend to get very confused easily. And let's go on with Jonathan Lucre.
I looked at Counts, and Counts is over there like this, just looking straight down. I mean, he's between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Right. And so I walk out and I pick up the phone. I call Gabe Kapler. Gabe was a special assistant with the Dodgers at the time, and I played with Gabe in Milwaukee. And I was like, did you guys just trade for me? He goes, well, we've been trying to get you. We've been putting phone calls in. I said, well, they just told me I've been traded, but they won't tell me who they traded me to. He's like, really? I was like, no. I said, is it you guys? And he goes, I don't think so. I haven't heard anything. I know we've been trying to, but nothing didn't work out. I said, okay, appreciate it. Hung up, went to the trainer who I was really close with. And I said, don't tell me who it is, write it down. Cause they do all the medical stuff. I said, who they trade me to? And he put it and said, Cleveland. Within 10 minutes, story comes out. Leaked.
TV.
Got leaked. And so what happened is
they put you in a spot.
They leaked it on purpose to force me
to say yes.
And out of spite, I wasn't out of spite. I took a few days to think about it because I didn't want to make an emotional decision.
First of all, when your initial words out of your mouth is, so out of spite, and then you backtrack after you realize what you said and say, well, no, it wasn't out of spite. I took a couple of days. I have questions. At least I did while I was listening to this. Now, as he continues on to tell the rest of the story, you will realize that it clearly wasn't out of spite of why he denied this trade. Check this out.
But I was like, are you kidding me? Like what? So the level of professionalism there is extremely not anymore, but like at that, it bothered me. I'm like, this is the way you're going to treat me after I played on a unbelievably team-friendly contract based on my production. And this is how you're going to treat me. Like it really, like it was wrong, bottom line. So I ended up declining the trade, not because out of spite, but because we talked to Chris Antonetti, and to his credit, was super, super honest and very professional.
Who Chris Antonetti is the president for the Cleveland Guardians now.
Yeah. And he said, my agent asked him, he said, hey, if Jonathan comes over there, will he catch next year whenever Jan is healthy again?
Yeah.
And he said, probably not. To be honest with you, he's going to DH and he's going to play first. And so that was my free agent season. And I had to decline that because just for that reason alone, right? Yeah. Because I'm a catcher. I'm not a first baseman.
Yep.
And I don't hit enough homers. I'm not a DH type guy.
Well, and I think anybody who's honest with themselves after hearing that is going to be like, well, no, duh, he declines the trade. Like, but at that time, it was like you were put in a position that was a no-win for you from a, public perception standpoint of like, oh, well, I'm sure like everybody in Cleveland was upset because they're like, well, we wanted you and you're rejecting us, right? Like you're rejecting coming to our city, playing for our team. And it's like, no. Like that, I'm not rejecting Cleveland. Like I would, like that has nothing to do with Cleveland. It has everything to do with, like I have one career and I have to protect it.
I mean that, and I'm a catcher, man. Like this is what I do.
Yep.
And and vice versa. If I'm Jan Gomes and Jan was a great catcher, right? Great player and great guy. And, there were other teams that I could go, like Texas, right? Texas needed me, even though you guys shellacked us that year.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
I don't want to talk about that. But
I do have some questions about that.
Yeah, we could talk about it. But, I go to Texas and I raked after I turned it on. Texas traded me. They traded me the next day. And actually, long term, it actually worked out for the Brewers better because they got Lewis Brinson.
Yeah.
Lewis Brinson turned into Christian Yelich.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. We're going to stop it right there. I think that's for the most part all I need. I want to revisit back what these deals would have been. Okay. What they would have been had it all panned out. If the Cleveland deal happens and he doesn't veto it, tell me who you know. They get Yu Chang Chong, a 20-year-old shortstop.
No idea who that is.
Never heard of him. They get prized switch hitting catching prospect, Francisco Mejia.
That name sounds familiar, but like for the Rays, I think
didn't do much. And Greg Allen, outfielder, was the other one. 4 minor league prospects total. Those were the 3 that they cared about the most. Francisco Mejia, Greg Allen, and Yu Chang Chong are the 3 of the 4 that everybody knew about and was the big deal there.
Yeah, Mejia did have a good stretch with the Rays. I was right about that. I do
Good
know
job.
who he is.
Good
I knew
job.
one of those guys at least.
So what are his career numbers?
So his best season, he had a 1.5 WAR season. That was with 6 home runs and 35 RBIs. Overall, throughout his career, he batted .239 with 29 total home runs and 118 RBIs.
Yeah, nothing special. So that was the deal they would have done had Lucroy not said no to it. Instead, the Brewers signed Lucroy and Jeremy Jeffers in that deal. And the Brewers get back Lewis Brinson, who was the top prospect at that point. Luis Ortiz, the pitcher, remember him, and outfielder Ryan Cordell as the player to be named later in that deal.
Still
and then Brinson gets moved in that deal as the centerpiece in that deal to get Yelich.
That's the reason that deal ends up being valuable for them. Before then, though, that's not that much better of a deal than what Cleveland was offering, for being honest.
Because those guys really didn't work out all that much either. But Brinson became a key piece in that, and we're able to flip it for Yelich. So, yeah.
Now I think he's playing like college football or something. He
went back to try to play college football. Yeah. Never worked out for him. All right, that'll do it for let's talk about the Crew. Coming up next, we got to talk about Lucas Van Ness. Apparently, the Packers think more of him than most Packer fans do. We'll do that coming up straight ahead. Step up to the plate, take a shot at winning major prizes in the $300,000 Big League Series at Potawatomi Casino Hotel, Milwaukee. April through June, you can win a share of $300,000 in prizes. All monthly promo entries count towards the grand finale drawings on June 26th. Get triple the entries during Brewers home games and score one of 3 all-new Toyota vehicles. More info online. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play. Only at Potawatomi. That's Wisconsin Sports Daily, live from Wisconsin Sports Radio Network studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Sparky here. Welcome back, Wisconsin Sports Daily. Steve Sparky Pfeiffer, Charlie Usen, producing today's show. We're just taking in a very entertaining Brewers D-backs game right now. We'll tell you what's going on in that momentarily. Wendy's invented the iconic spicy chicken sandwich. Wendy's new spicy chicken sandwich is crispier and more flavor-packed than ever. And the breading, even crispier. Flavor inside, loud outside. 9 peppers and spices give it that bold layered heat. Wendy's spicy chicken. Order it today in the Wendy's app. All right, Charlie, you're over there whining and complaining about the Brewers game.
This is the dumbest game on the face.
14-1 right now in the 8th. Nobody's out. So what is going on, Charlie?
James McCann is currently pitching for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he's throwing the dumbest pitch on earth. I think it's technically an eephus pitch. It's going 10 miles in the air and then landing at like dude's head. Like, it's crazy. It's awful. I hate this. And
it's like slow pitch softball.
Well, and the
That's what it
Brewers
looks
are putting it into play sometimes, and the Diamondbacks just do not want this game to end, I guess.
I mean, that was probably Jake Bauer's worst professional at bat of his career, would you say?
Yeah, I would say Jake Bauers really needs to pick it up.
It's so horrible.
I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to hear it.
It's
you
horrible.
Just cut. Why didn't you yell for Sal to be cut?
Really, really embarrassing how bad that was. It really was.
Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing.
It was embarrassing. He used to look at this it so badly. Oh my god!
You're gonna make Tommy quit over here.
It was not a pretty thing. It's not 4:00, but we're not gonna potentially be on at 4:00. So let's get to it right now.
It's time for your green and gold update on Wisconsin Sports Daily, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network with Steve Sparky Pfeiffer.
Frelick hits into a double play off McCann. So to the 9th we go for the Milwaukee Brewers, 14-1 Brewers. Green and gold update time. And, of course, we've got to talk about Lucas Van Ness, who earlier today, apparently the Packers have picked up the 5th-year option on Lucas Van Ness. And as Rob Domofsky wrote in his story, despite recording only 8.5 sacks over his first 3 NFL seasons, Lucas Van Ness has the 5th-year option picked up on his rookie deal, a source confirmed to ESPN on Thursday. The deadline to pick up said option is tomorrow. We will have Pete Doherty on from the Green Bay Press Gazette tomorrow at 4:00 to talk more about this decision to make that move. And we'll get Pete Doherty's thoughts on the draft, get Pete Doherty's thoughts on any free agent possibilities. Calais Campbell off the market. He goes to the Baltimore Ravens earlier today. So everybody's fan favorite that they wanted, they're not going to get in Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell's second stint now with the Ravens after agreeing to a 1-year deal with Baltimore. I told Charlie before the show started to go back, Pro Football Focus, and find out what kind of numbers Lucas Van Ness has from a grading perspective, because Brian Gutekunst, earlier in the offseason said, quote, I would have liked to get those games back that he missed this past year because he was playing at such a high level for us. Anytime you miss those kind of games in the year, it kind of stuns you a little bit. He's playing very well for us. It's always tough to get back to that level when you have that pause in the season. We feel really good about him, where he's headed, what he's done for us so far, and what he'll do for us in the future. Charlie Usen, what say the numbers?
So last season, in less snaps that he got than he got in 2024, he got 458 that year, 444 this past season. He had a 71.7 grade, which was his best overall grade. 62.3 grade, 71.7 coverage grade this season. That's kind of crazy. 62.3 overall grade, but still his best overall in a full season for the Green Bay Packers. Last year, he recorded 6 sacks on 5 QB hits and 11 QB hurries, despite, again, not being out there as like that full-time number 2 pass rusher. That is by far his best season there. It was a pretty solid year from Lucas Van Ness. I wouldn't say it was enough to make me super excited about him, but it was a step forward. And last offseason, I was saying that was a guy that I thought could take a big step this past year, and then he got hurt throughout the season. That hurt him a little bit. I don't know. It was a good overall season, not a fantastic overall season.
Charlie, they're going to pay him $13.8 million in 2027. Did you at any point while watching him say, that's a $14 million player? At any point, has any fan watching him go, I'd pay him $14 million. Now, I know I take heat all the time when I get mad over some of the contracts that get paid out, right? The Dellavedova contract, I was absolutely livid over. The Connaughton contract, I didn't like that one either. The AJ Green contract, wasn't a fan of that either. Wasn't as mad because I referenced back to Pat Connaughton and said, well, based on the salaries and everything else, I guess it is what it is at this point. $13.8 million for a guy that's got 8 sacks in 3 seasons. My God, like that seems nuts to me.
It does, but overall on PFF, he was the 27th ranked edge rusher out of 115. So that number
that's a good number.
Lifts him up a little bit. If we look at the highest paid
good.
or those edge rushers in that same area, so Uchenna Nwosu, Harold Landry, Hassan Reddick, Carl Granderson are all 25 through 29 on that list.
He's as good as those guys?
Those guys are getting paid $14 million. And I think
but I'm asking you, do you think he's as good as those guys?
Yeah, I think at this point in their careers, Harold Landry didn't really have a good year last year, and he was kind of on a prove-it deal in that situation. Hassan Reddick has taken a step back for sure. Carl Granderson is a guy that you don't hear very often. Joey Bosa is a guy that can't stay on the field. He's making 12.6 this past season. I don't know. I think he could be, if he can stay on the field, that is, in that same range. Guys above him, Dio Odangbo for the Bears last season, who's a complete non-factor. Yep. Jonathan Cooper, who's a guy that gets overshadowed a lot in Denver's defense. Yeah, I think he does fit in that group.
Tommy's got a microphone. He's going to start. They're 1 out away. What's up, Tommy?
Oh, I don't know. You turned it on for me. I was just coming in listening. I just wanted to hear Charlie talk.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh.
I like
I
Lucas
thought you
Van
sat
Ness
down by a microphone and thought you wanted to talk about
No,
something.
I mean, it's just 1 out away here. I know you like to skedaddle as soon as that last out hits the glove. So I was just getting ready to go, man.
Good. Yes, that's correct. Once the last out hits the glove, I'm out because the franchise Tim Allen likes to be on promptly after the last pitch.
Yeah. Is he
By the
here
way,
now?
about that, there's been a lot of me when it comes to talking about his billboard, Tommy's billboard. Has anybody seen Tim Allen's billboard that also should be out?
I've never once said me, by the way.
Well,
that is everyone else.
I'm going to go look at my billboard this weekend.
Oh, my God.
My dad saw my billboard. My mom saw my billboard.
Big time,
But has anybody saw Tim Allen's billboard is what I'm asking?
You guys, first of all, old friend Mr. Winkler sent me the picture of Tim's billboard this morning.
So that is out there. You've seen
it?
Yeah,
that one was down. That's why the Milwaukee Tool came to fruition today, because that's the one that he saw. He saw Tim Allen.
So you're not by the Milwaukee Tool, Tim is.
Well, I just assume it's in rotation, I guess. Are you booking this for overtime here? It's a final at American Family Field, 13-1.
No, so go back to what you were saying about the billboards.
It's not. You guys.
So Tim Allen is downtown, and you're the one by the airport.
No, Tim Allen is also by the airport. My mother sent me a picture of Tim Allen's billboard as well.
So maybe you're not big enough to be on both of them. Maybe they only have you on one of them.
Oh gosh, I didn't make the call here, guys.
I didn't either. That's why I was asking.
I'm just glad that if we are going by the best looking here at the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network, we went with me and Tim as we should have.
I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that at all. Coming up next, it is the big old hunk of love.
They're calling me the Milwaukee Tool now on the Mason Crosby show. Did you hear that?
That's not nice.
That's so good, dude. That's so good.
Because it was there. So then Mason was like, "Wow, perfect spot for you." When he heard
that's not very nice. But in fairness, you're mean to Mason all the time, so you had it coming. Time for Tim and Tommy. Brewers get a big win, but what about Brandon Woodruff's future? Is the career over? Stay tuned.